This is Confabulation. I am Michelle, and my pronouns are she, her. Joining me is...
Hi, I'm Pearl, she, her pronouns.
We are Our Sister's House, a domestic violence organization providing advocacy and education for survivors of domestic violence. If you or anyone you know is experiencing domestic violence, you can call our hotline at 253-383-4275 or visit our website at oursistershouse.com. Today we're going to talk about the cycle of abuse. Something to know is that there are 4 stages in the cycle of abuse. There's the tension stage, the incident stage, the reconciliation stage, and the honeymoon stage. The tension building stage is an abusive incident that occurs, and usually it's passive aggressive behavior that happens. So usually it's when like a passive abusive behavior, poor communication, and then that behavior is kind of escalating that happens, and it's usually between 2 people. It can happen with more people if it's like a parent or a child. And so the victim often strongly fears anger that's happening. Then there can be when the incident of the abuse actually occurs. And so this involves the abuser or abusers trying to dominate that victim through acts of violence. So it can be physical, such as hitting and pushing, but it can also be that emotional abuse, like shouting, threatening, or name calling, diminishing somebody just with words and things like that. You also have that reconciliation stage, and so the abuser can apologize for that harm, and it's an affectionate and caring type of stage. So usually the abusers are they're saying, I'm sorry, or they're trying to make things seem like everything's okay. And then afterwards, there's that honeymoon period. During the honeymoon period, everything's going smoothly around. Usually it's the home, and everything's peaceful and calm, which often makes the victim and the abuser seem like everything's changed and it's okay. So that's a very quick, brief overview. Something to think about in the tension building stage is it's usually like you're walking on eggshells and things are going like, oh, I have to tiptoe around everybody as things are happening. When the incident's actually occurring, you know that's when the violence is happening, whether it's emotional or psychological. Reconciliation, everything is kind of like happy and you know you're getting your apology. And then the honeymoon is things are good in the home.
Yeah. I would say the tension building too is also like a mind reading stage. If we're talking about in like for family violence, you definitely have a situation where there's dishes in the sink, there's the assumption the kids are going to clean the dishes, parents come home, dishes aren't done. Now there's a whole conversation. Before, there was never a conversation about who was going to do it on what time, what day. And if you have multiple siblings like I did, whose turn? So there's definitely like a lack of communication and also an understanding of structure and expectations that are things that anybody in any sort of relationship can learn. And they can learn, to relay their needs. It's like, hey, actually, I can only do dishes from 6 to 8 on Thursday. Let's talk about me doing it on 6 to 8, But there's a lot of assumption, I think, when you're talking about family, that you see your family, you just assume everyone knows you because you live here. They should expect to know it. And I know growing up, I heard that a lot, especially from multiple women in my life, would be like, do you not live here? Do you not shop here? You should have just known what to buy at the grocery store. You should have just known how to clean this thing. You should have known to do this. And you're like, well, that was actually never communicated. And I think also as you grow older, that those change, those expectations change. And sometimes parents don't say that. Like, hey, when you were 6, no one said you had to take out the trash, but you're 12 now, you have to take out the trash. And that's actually never communicated. There's just an assumption that you should know that.
Or the other sibling did it at this age, so it's assumed you're going to do it at this age. So, like, one of them was, you use the dishes, I'm going to use the laundry. Because you can reach across and start the laundry, now it's assumed that you're going to do the laundry. So now maybe the dishes is one tension builder. Now add on the laundry to it. And so those are 2 tension building aspects that can lead to that incident or abuse. So a lot of times maybe it's one that can occur, but sometimes it's multiple that will lead into that incident or that abuse.
Right. And I know also in that tension building, I think something, it's usually with like, stereotypically the father coming home and the kids scrambling, everyone's scared. Right. And I think that says something that as a psyche, as a society, we have adopted that that's normal, that children know that communication's going to be bad when come home, that there's an expectation they felt, they're going to run to hide, they're going to be scared. And maybe that's as unfair to fathers in the current thing, but that exists, that we have that. You see it on media where it's like the expectation is that the kids didn't do something and there's going to be some reprimand when they come home.
Yeah, there's also that idea that one parent could be that tension builder and the other one is more of that reconciliator. Or so when one parent comes home, it's like, oh man, they're always going to be the one who says you got to do the dishes, you got to take out the trash, you didn't put the laundry away, you got to help make dinner, right? And then that other one who says, I'm sorry for that guardian who told you to do all the chores. And so you have that one who builds up that tension and who does do that incident and abuse. And then all of a sudden you have the one who apologizes for the other one's behavior, who helps bring that down. So they're both parties in the actual cycle.
Right. They're at two different stages. One's doing tension building and the other one's down reconciliation or honeymoon,
And so they're both actors though in the event. And that's something that people don't always think about, is they're enabling the other one's behavior by doing that. And so if they're seeing it and they're excusing it, they're not stopping it, and they're not making it so there's a better way of the action. And so by making that honeymoon stage happen now, right? So one does the tension building and the incident of abuse, and then does the other one does the reconciliation and gets that family back to the honeymoon stage. They are now continuing that full cycle. And so they're enabling it to continue on in that house rather than meeting the problem at the front and saying, like, head on. And so they can say, okay, this is what the problem is in the household. How can we fix this as a family? Rather than let's just continue it.
Right. And I think if you go talk about incidents abuse, right, and especially parental discipline, you can hit a kid, you can yell at a kid, there's so many things we've normalized as quote unquote discipline that to any other relationship you would have said this is abuse. But because we normalize screaming at a child rather than calmly communicating or expectations, we normalize hitting someone rather than correcting them and explaining why. We normalize locking children, honestly, in their rooms, like, rather than, setting curfews and boundaries and honestly effective communication. And so some of these incidences of abuse, I think a lot of people wouldn't even recognize it as abuse. It's kind of like that's an expectation that you're going to get hit with a belt. You're going to get thrown in your room. You're going to be deprived of this. You're going to be talked down to, That's kind of the expectation that when you fail, someone's going to call you a name. Someone's, going to tell you how you failed them or you didn't meet their expectation. You disappointed them in some way, And
it's not saying that those parenting things or even talking within guardianship is easy, but talking about those feelings of what's going on are really important to have those healthy relationships. And so going through those tensions within even partners are going to be very difficult. And so having that healthy communication within those relationships are going to be really important, to say those I feel statements. Just because if you can have those conversations with your significant other or whoever is helping raise the children, are going to make an example for them in the house. So saying, I feel it's really important that the dishes are done because I need them for dinner. Please have them done so we can eat by 7 is a really important example, because then the children know that there's a reason those chores are being asked to be done.
Yeah, and we should assume learning individuals that they know that that's the reason, or they fully understand that that's the reason. You know, kids just haven't done the calculations that we have, honestly, about schedules and timing. And that's one of the things that we teach them as kids, how to do the task, when the task is due, and communication. And to be honest, what I have to say to parents who find that difficult to say, it's like, do you have the same difficulties with your coworkers, your boss, or anybody else in life that you slap them, you kick them, you call them names rather than communicate to them your reasons and your whys? And what is ultimately you're teaching your child, because they can't slap, kick, and punch their boss when they don't understand. So honestly, it's like, it's a conversation that we're having that it's like, as parents, you have to recognize that what you're teaching these kids isn't applicable to the rest of society. And the reality is, if you're coming in screaming at the kids, you didn't cook dinner or you didn't wash the dishes, you know, you're grounded to your room. It's like, well, you're not going to solve that problem like that, you know?
And it's not always easy to communicate right at the office. So learning the best way to communicate in any platform is going to be really important. But we want to make sure that those cycles of abuse are going to be really important to stop. It's just one of those things that in the family, you don't want to teach it and pass it on for future generations, because many people don't realize that you may have inherited it without knowing it. And so you may have been seeing it and you learned it from as a learned behavior.
Right. And like reconciliation in the abuse cycle is really essentially people moving on. It's sorry, I'm not sorry. It's not actually someone saying, here's the steps to fix this in the problem. You know, as we were saying, if the issue is that you're having a timing schedule issue, then you need to make a home schedule, chore chart or something. That's the solution. The reconciliation can't be, I yelled at the kid did the dishes. Okay, now we're watching a movie, we're happy. We didn't talk about why I yelled at you. We didn't talk about how we solve this problem in the future. So on Tuesday, again, the dishes aren't done. I yell at the kid, it happens, and it just continues to happen. Because real reconciliation, real dealing with that problem is setting it up so that you don't encounter this. It's an understanding and a mechanism, like how do we avoid this conflict in this issue in the future? And abuse doesn't address that. It does not actually say this is how we resolve it.
Right. And that's a way to resolve the issue. For reconciliation, you're going back into the cycle.
Thank you for joining us. I'm Pearl and this is Michelle, and we're with Our Sister's House, a domestic violence advocacy agency. And if you or anyone you know is experiencing domestic violence, reach out to us at 253-383-4275 or visit our website at oursistershouse.com. Bye.
A note from the producer, our Holidays event is coming up soon, this December 17th, where we are partnering with Me Centro here in Tacoma, Washington. Please check out our social media for some more information or give us a call at Our Sister's House. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and thank you for tuning in to Confabulation.